Our superintendent is at a conference. Our assistant superintendent, Ms. Lynn David, will be facilitating the meeting with me here tonight. And partly because it's Valentine's Day and we wanted to make, and our superintendent being out, you'll notice that there's less agenda items up front, less reporting, so that's why I say we can make up some time. All right, moving on to item 8. And we do have the comment cards. Let's see if there's any here that are not part of something agendized. And that one's and safety. Okay, let's see if the safety report is out on this week. Hold on a second. Okay, I don't think it's on there.
First reading, first report. Or I'm sorry, not safety report.
I know this is from Jackie and it's safety HSR, I think. High-speed rail update. Okay, so what we'll do, since we don't have the safety report agendized because of our abbreviated meeting, I'll have you covered in the public comments. So then we're going to go into the public comments section, of which we usually go in alphabetical order. So Ms. Ayer, would you come up and under public comments, say whatever it is you'd like to say, and but try to keep it to 3 minutes because, you know, it's good for the goose, it's good for the gander. I got in trouble a couple meetings ago.
I did want to give school board an update and community update. We had the California Department of Public Health come to our last town council meeting and give an update on Vision Zero, their plan for traffic safety in the community. And some good news is that they are working, the county is working with local jurisdictions to get the state legislature to make some changes in the vehicle code that will allow them to adjust the speed limits, for example, on Crown Valley, where right near the school it's 50 miles an hour, literally past the freeway ramps, to reduce those speeds without having to do more traffic studies. So, and that can perhaps also happen in Escondido where we've had problems as well. So when that comes to a point where they need help from the school board and the community to support that effort with the legislature, I would appreciate it if you guys would consider it. Second thing is that while a lot of people were doing the happy dance about high-speed rail yesterday, I mean, maybe not everybody, I know some people in this community are supportive of it. Unfortunately, there was an announcement today by the CEO that the environmental studies would continue, which means we are still fighting the same battle. The battle that the community has fought on this, trying to get the route, if not outside the community, then at least underground, that is entirely at the environmental studies level. So everything that we need to work on or have been working on will continue and does not go away. So unfortunately, our weight is not lifted. Anyway. Give you an update. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Ms. Ayer.
Thank you.
Okay, and Ms. Fosberg, I'm glad you're back. Okay, let me make sure I do what I'm supposed to do here. I'm supposed to pass down reading materials, graciously provided by Mrs. Fosberg. Okay.
Good evening.
3 minutes.
Try to stay in my minutes tonight.
Okay.
Thank you for having me again. I'm here to follow up on comments I made to the board on January 10th. Mr. Fox and Mr. King and several community members reached out to me after that presentation. I was really grateful for that. Thank you. In addition, I've met with Dr. Cooper, Ms. Toledo, and Mr. King, and I was very pleased to be involved in that. So thank you for being responsive to that. I'm here again because I want to continue to make sure that the issue stays on the front burner. Because we know just how important literacy is to all of our kids, right? I went looking at the numbers and stunningly, unless I'm reading it wrong, 81% of our third graders last year were not at reading level. So I'm grateful that we're working on it and I can't wait for those numbers to shift because it really impacts every aspect of our life. It impacts on how we vote, if we can read a lease, if we can buy a car, what we understand about our medications, what we understand about our food labels. If we can't read, all of those things become incredibly difficult. So I'm hoping you're on the right track. The board, I asked a couple of things of. I'd like for the board to formally adopt October as Dyslexia Awareness Month. And I'm not sure if that's a board function or an administration superintendent function, but I think it's an important thing to have so that we are acknowledging it, getting the word out, and people can be more informed about it. And I'd also like the board to formally adopt the California Dyslexia Guidelines. I understand that some districts treat those as advisory and not mandates. So I'd like to know the board's position on whether those guidelines are mandatory or just advisory, and if we are following those. I appreciate that. I've talked about the need to employ a reading specialist who is certified in evidence-based dyslexia program. I'm hoping those kinds of things happen, okay? My time is up.
You actually have 52 seconds.
Oh,
I
okay.
just wanted to give you a heads up.
Thank you. This is what I want to say to you. I know you all are dedicated to kids in our schools, and I believe that many of you agree that we can do better in this. To that end, I'm going to ask you to investigate and implement the best practices and programs we can for our kids so that we can be very proud of them and then we can send them off into the world well prepared for what's facing them. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming back and finishing.
Thanks.
I am grateful to you for bringing this awareness to this. Okay, let's see. That was it for public comments. So now you have the 2 cards. All right, we're on item 8.01 AATA representative. I don't see Ms. Cassell here. Is anyone standing in? Okay, so there's none. CSA representative? I don't see. Okay, so none there. It's Valentine's Day, go figure. But our student representative is here. So let's have your report.
Okay. Sorry I don't have papers this time. I wasn't able to get home because of the rain to print out papers, so, but I can share the doc with any of you if you want it. Okay, and I also shared it with Yolanda, so she'll have it too. Anyways, okay. So at Meadowlark, they had 3 4th graders participate in the 4th annual AADUSD Spelling Bee held on February 6th at High Desert. Students Shelby Blaine, Angeline Newell, and Everett Blaha studied long and hard and did their very best, but in the end, Everett, I'm saying that right, Blaha captured the 1st place trophy and is eligible to move on to the county spelling bee. Meadowlark has also begun their coin wars. Students are bringing in coins found in sofa cushions, coat pockets, and pennies found on the ground and turning them into their glasses. The class that has the most weight in coins wins a popsicle party. Money earned will be used for assemblies and field trips. At High Desert, the students, the 5th grade students came back from outdoor science school today, and I heard a lot of great reviews of how much fun it was. Signups are starting for the High Desert Talent Show that will be happening in April. And lastly, both High Desert and Meadowlark are having a Valentine's Day Bunko fundraiser for the music program on February 22nd. Lastly, at Vasquez, we had the VHS Roadshow with the High Desert 8th graders on Tuesday, where they participated in a Vasquez pep rally and had a tour of the campus. We have Mr. Vasquez coming up on March 20th. Spring sports are in full swing: baseball, softball, boys volleyball, swimming, and track. And we are hoping that the new softball field will be ready by our first home softball game on March 8th. I'm really excited. We are beginning the registration process for next year. Students should be finished selecting classes in about a month. And lastly, the Young Americans will be coming to Vasquez next month for our performing arts students. And happy Valentine's Day.
I have a question for you. How many 4th graders at Meadowlark participated in the spelling bee? Did you say
4.
4? Does that seem low? I don't know what the expectations are.
I honestly don't remember.
Okay.
I mean, you
what it was
weren't
last
here,
year.
so I'm just, I just envisioned a spelling bee having like 20 kids there and it next to the
That was just 4th grade. There were also 5th and 6th graders from High Desert there.
Oh.
So,
Thank
yeah,
you.
there were about 10 total.
All right, thank you. So that is our student reps. Okay, do we have any submissions tonight?
Yes.
We have Holly Smith from Inspire, submitting today.
Okay, hello, good evening, and happy Valentine's Day. I am Holly Smith with Inspire Charter Schools, and we are submitting our petition for renewal.
Thank you. I know that, never remember how this goes. Just the submission tonight, and then there'll be a
Yes.
public hearing where all the
Yes.
questions and answers and presentations.
Yes.
So we'll do that.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I so appreciate it.
They gave it to us tonight, so we would have 4 days. It's been.
All right.
They surely do.
Bear with me for a second, folks. I'm checking a text from the superintendent to make sure that I'm doing what I need to do. Okay, I think I've got this covered. All right. So even when he's not here, he's helping. All right, so we took care of 8.04. Okay. 8.05, board member comments. And I'll just keep doing what we always do, and we'll start at the end and work our way down the table. Mr. Porter?
You know, apart from happy Valentine's Day to everyone, keep it short in the interest of time. We can all get home to our families, and again, happy Valentine's Day. And thank you, Mr. President.
Mr. Jorgensen?
Yeah, I have a few things here. First up, I want to congratulate our boys and girls soccer programs advancing to CIF playoff competition. The boys got to compete at the quarterfinals yesterday or Friday in Santa Barbara. And I did receive a news article regarding the game. Even though they lost, some of our athletes were recognized for their incredible play and competition. So it was a well-fought, a great season for the boys. Now, more importantly, the girls have advanced, and they're going to be hosting a CIF semifinal game on Saturday at Vasquez. So I encourage everybody to come out there. It's just fun to watch. Both Coach Terry and Coach Peter have done an exceptional job with our girls and boys soccer programs. I was at a soccer game, and I was there at the wrong time because there was a change, so I had time to kill. So I got up and I walked around our new softball facility, and I noticed a couple things that I want to bring to attention. While walking around the track, I noticed that the track rails in a couple places are separating. And they're starting to rise up out of the ground, and I don't know if we've accepted it, signed off on it, whatever. Just some details. I walked around the center field, went around the other side, got around to right field, and their water's a great qualifier because it's showing some damage from the runoff. So in the design layout, right by the right field fence and in that little, what they looks to me like the bullpen where the players would warm up, it's starting to gouge. It runs across the track and then goes to the main drain that exits it from the campus site. I don't know if we're missing a drain or if it's the just soil or some treatment, but this is something we're going to have to put up with every year unless we have our whoever before we clear off, sign off on that. With regards to the bullpens, they're the same short fence, and there doesn't seem to be any. Maybe there's going to be temporary netting for safety so that when a player is warming up during the game, that they have some protection from a foul ball, and or if they're pitching, whether they're coming towards the dugout or going towards the walking track, there's nothing to keep a wild pitch from going on outside. Just something that I noticed. I came around to the concession. I think the concession looks great. And I was kind of like snooping around the edges, and I know the roll-up doors because security is always a big issue for our campus. And it looks to me down at the bottom there was some locking mechanisms so that we could secure it for holiday, summer break when we're not using it. They don't seem to be fitting where you can put a lock in. I try to adjust them. How do we get a lock in here? So it's just something, an adjustment to look at. And I think the last thing on the softball field, the walk-in double gate is where maintenance and maintenance and school vehicles can come up for maintenance, repair and stuff, but there doesn't seem to be, when those are open, there's nothing to prevent any other person from driving up on the field. that track is going to be an attractive target for somebody to drive. And these just a couple of temporary poles that can be locked in. We need to take them out. It's a simple process, put them in there so people can walk, our maintenance carts can get in, but vehicles can't get in there. It's a safety feature for me. Then the last thing I have is I got a couple of calls regarding the road show, and there was some concern that there wasn't any interest sheets for the athletics like we've done in years past, where we combined the athletics open house with the road show all at the same time. So I'm presuming that the high school and the athletic department will be putting on an open house for athletics for the middle school to let all the potential student athletes, here's what's available to them at the high school. The 2 calls that I got, I referred them to, I said, call the Vasquez office, they'll be sure to answer your questions. And that's all I have.
Awesome. Thank you, Mr. Jordan. Mr. Fallscraft, anything?
Yeah, without going into any detail here, I'm the parent of a SPED student. I've been the parent of a SPED student for a very long time. I think I have the most cognitively limited child in the entire district. So I know what SPED is about. I also know in the 2 years that I've been here, there's been some drastic changes in the administration of this district and the people that fill key positions, especially on the sites. I know that we hire educational professionals, and I know that they have plans, and I know that there are improvements, and there are measurable improvements. In fact, if I were to be able to share my comments to the superintendent's evaluation, there were directives that I gave him, especially about certain things that are being discussed. And so I want to remind everyone that sometimes, especially in the governmental and bureaucracies, that things don't happen overnight, but I do see progress that especially affects my own child. That said, there's been some reporting on, nothing nefarious, but on the audit findings, especially with the credit cards. I want to make sure that everyone understands that I will not have this stain on my t-shirt. When the superintendent comes back, again, I will ask him in open session next time if anyone on his staff has turned in credit card purchases without receipts. I want to make sure that everyone understands that that is not a current process. Okay, I haven't had a rant like this in a while, but I'll make it short. The LAUSD teacher strike. I don't even know where to start. So here's what we'll do. We'll just declare a moratorium on charter hearings. In what world is that legal? So, in other words, if a charter comes in and says, I'm going to submit something, I'm going to say, no, you're not going to submit anything because I'm going to have a moratorium and I'm going to have my staff study this for 6 months, which mysteriously lines up with what? All the charters that are for-profit charters have to divest their interest into not existing anymore or becoming nonprofit charters by June 30th. So conveniently, any of those that would wish to walk up to the dais or the podium in that district would be precluded from doing so. So I'm expecting a stampede of those that want to run in here under the wire. Come on, let's go. We'll burn up all of our resources looking at all these petitions, and I'll still have my same 20 questions, and either you make it through it or you don't. But what I find surprising is that LACO, the organization or the agency that sees over all of the districts, including LAUSD, sat in here and told us in 14-15, when I was still sitting out there in the audience, that charters would be our downfall because they would give us some type of competition. Now, 4 or 5 years later, guess what? Charters are going to be your downfall because they're going to give you some competition. Imagine that. What a huge discovery it was for me to hear that. But it's kind of odd that the only people that can do this are those that have big enough and deep enough budgets and pockets that someone who wished to walk up here, I know what I would do. I would file a petition on purpose and then knowing that it wouldn't be heard, the first thing I would do is go file a court injunction in the 9th District and shoot that idea where it came from. But let me tie this together at the end to say, you know what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to drive down the Antelope Valley Freeway at 80 miles an hour like everyone else does, except I'm going to have a piece of paper that I sent the governor, so when I get pulled over, I'm just going to tell the officer, look, I have a piece of paper, I wrote a letter to the California governor, and I am going to just, I got people studying this, and you're going to wait for the study. And then the most amazing thing to me is this. In what world do you have a brand new governor who hasn't even sat in his chair for 5 minutes, and you take a huge issue of this magnitude that affects education in this whole state and just drop it in his lap, and he takes it in his lap, and we all walk away and laugh. The saddest part about this is only the people that have the pockets deep enough to stand up there and fight are the ones that can win this battle. So we're just adrift. So I'm glad everyone's focuses on that instead of, maybe they should give us some money for our classrooms. I think that would be cool. Okay, thank you for bearing with me. That's my rant.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Foster.
That was gracious of you, Mike.
Still connecting the dots, but we'll fill me into the parking lot. Okay. 9. Oh, I'm sorry. Miss
No, it's okay.
Jensen, it's your turn.
Sadly, I think I connected.
That was very nice.
You want to donate your
Thank
time?
you. Okay.
I don't have a lot to say. I just, first of all, I want to say that I'm grateful that our kids are home safe from outdoor science camp in this crazy weather. So I'm happy that they're home safely because they're the ones that matter all this. Also, just so our public knows, Mr. King hosted the superintendent's breakfast for the Antelope Valley, our AXA group. So that was great. This is the first time that we've had a superintendent from the Acton Aqua Dulce host one of those breakfasts. Each superintendent in Antelope Valley takes a turn, and so this was his first time for this district. So I just want everyone to know that he's doing a great job, and he's out there and he's networking with lots of other superintendents. It's not great to be alone on your own little island over here because you don't get great ideas and you don't collaborate with other people. So I just want to give him a shout out and let everyone know that he's really going out and networking and doing some great things. So that's all I have to say.
Okay. All right. For my board member comments, first, just a little plug because there's an opportunity in town. Many of the community groups, it's very synergistic, and usually we're pulling in the same direction on behalf of, if not the kids, the community in total. What I mean by that: Friends of the Library, Friends of the Park, Women's Club, Lions Club, at any rate. So in that spirit, there's an organ concert that will be, I don't know the date of it, I'll find out before the end of the meeting, over at the Acton Community Presbyterian Church. It's not a religious event, it's just an organ concert with a very acclaimed organ player, and the public is welcome. And I'm not sure how often, it's not very often, arts things come to town. It's a small place, and so people can take advantage of it. It's courtesy of the church, and also Miss Sandy Matson, who is big in the Women's Club as well as the Acton Aqua Dulce Arts Council, and that's why I was saying that generally these organizations work in tandem to try to do things. So that's there if anybody wants it, and I'll get you the date. No specific other comments for me. I do have a question, Lynn, because we did do away with most of the superintendent's report, and for brevity. Is there anything that you can report since it came up regarding construction and softball field?
Yes, last Friday, I think it was last Friday, we did a walk for the punch list on the field. So the concession stand is a separate contract from the field itself. There are a few little items that we need to finalize. One of them is, of course, like where the water, there was a dip, all the settling of the rain created a small dip. A few other items, getting blocks and such. We anticipate, what with the rain, it's a little hard to tell, but we anticipate that the field should be ready to begin to use at the end of February, first week in March is what we're looking at, to actually, because they have to get there and fill the dip and then repair those few places where we've had some damage from the rain. So they're looking to finalize that. Our project manager, Mr. Bose, is going through with a fine-tooth comb to make sure that everything is completely proper when we accept it. The concession stand itself, next Friday will be a walk for the punch list. That particular vendor's been a little bit more challenging to work with. There's a few things that we need to finalize on those. We're going to go through the punch list and itemize any last minute things that we need to do. We anticipate that'll be ready by the end of March. So the field, at this point, we believe will be ready for the girls to use in the first week in March. And then we can use the concession stand shortly afterwards, but we expect by the end of March. I do want to acknowledge the fact that we will see presently a donation form. Mr. Vos is going to purchase the sink that will go into the building. It was something that was intended to be taken out of one of the rooms as a cost-saving measure when it was designed, and he has said that rather than do that, he would like to donate that item. When they opened the gym, I understand that he donated the casework. I wasn't aware of that until today. So he would like to make that donation to the district rather than taking a sink out of an existing room, so we'll be bringing that to you. We do believe by beginning of March and on the end of March.
Mr. President, can you ask them to check the walking path railing to make sure those joints are connected properly? They may have to reconnect them, and it's on the eastern side is the part that I noticed, on the east part of the walking path.
You're taking notes. Okay. All right, and then anything on Proposition 39 funding that you want to share?
Yes, we are working and finalizing, these last few days to get a request for proposal out. We have two separate projects. The Prop 39 money was money that is explicitly for energy saving projects. Earlier this year, there was an approved plan for both LED retrofitting, and that will be at both Meadowlark and High Desert, the LED project. And then there's a replacement of eight air conditioning units at Meadowlark. So that was already approved. We're going to finalize the request for proposals probably in the next week and put it out. So we expect to bring probably within 4 to 6 weeks the contracts to you for that, and then the work is anticipated to be done by June. So that'll be estimated about $15,000 to $20,000 savings per year in energy when the projects are implemented.
Ms. Day?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
All I was going to say is I was going to, obviously, thank staff for being on the lookout for these kind of things. In this case, the state gives you the money for these projects, but what we get out of it, obviously, is the recurring energy savings. So that's a net benefit to our operating budget. And in addition to the recurring energy savings, old units turn into new units. So in theory, there's also less ongoing maintenance. So it's a gift that gives twice. And so it's just incumbent upon us to make sure that we're exercising those opportunities.
Yeah, and sorry, just to clarify, the project was designed to fit completely within money from Prop 39, so there's no additional general fund or any of the money. Was completely sized within the money that can be used only for that type of project.
Did you want to ask?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. President. It was about the last subject we're talking about, the softball field. So are we going to have like a grand opening or something sometime in March? Like have
yeah, it'll probably be towards the end of March because we want to be able to to celebrate and use the concession stand as well.
And I had a member of Larry's family, his sister-in-law, contact me today, Larry Layton. So we'll have some kind of a naming ceremony or something as a part of that for him.
Yeah, we're trying to get a little bit better handle on what the precise date will be because we don't want to schedule it and then not be able to.
Somewhere late March, early April type of thing.
Yes.
Thank you, Ms. Davis.
All right, thanks. And I guess what's to note there, and it's I take no offense by it, the students, pending the approval of the punch list and the closeout of the project, will get to use the field before the ribbon cutting. I'm fine with that. They should be able to use the field as soon as it's ready for them.
I agree.
All right. Okay. So that's the end of that. Let's move on to the consent agenda. The consent agenda, as it's proposed, includes 9.01 minutes from the last board meeting on January 12th, 2 board meetings ago. It includes the minutes from the board meeting on the 24th. It includes the personal action report and the warrant register and the Williams lawsuit settlement. By the way, there were no findings. And these are normally things that we glom together, combine on the consent agenda. And so, do I have a motion?
I'll second it.
I'm sorry, and 9.6 also will be part of the consent agenda. Thank you. Okay, so do I have a motion to move in the consent agenda?
So moved, Mr. President.
Okay, Ed Porter, I'll second it. MF, call the question?
Aye.
Aye. So that's
501.
5-0 to 0.
500, I'm sorry.
Yep. All right, so we're through the consent agenda. Thank you, folks. All right. 10.01 is a public hearing on low-performing student block grant plan for 2018 and 19 through 2020-21 school year. And it's a public hearing, there's no action, it's just discussion, information, it's a procedural type of agenda item. Dr. Cooper.
In 2018, June of 2018, a new state grant program was established entitled the Low Performing Student Block Grant. Our school district is eligible to receive $90,000. In order to qualify for this particular grant, we have to look at our students who are not under LCFF, which would include our low income, our foster youth students, and our English learners, as well as our students with disabilities. So we couldn't include those students in this count. We have 46 eligible students, and it's our job, we've been tasked with developing a plan, and the plan is to look at professional developments to help increase the academic scores of our students in both English language arts and mathematics.
If I may, 'cause I had questions about this myself, so maybe you guys don't, but I'll just clarify. So typically the way school funding works is there is LCFF augments for unduplicated students when you pass certain thresholds. Unduplicated students are English language learners, foster, low socioeconomic. The English learners, thank you. This particular state program, as I interpret it, is to give schools a tool for extra funding for students who are underperforming and don't fall into those categories, to say those kids are also important, and we're going to give you some money to try to improve scores. And the program you have to design that has to be one that can target those students.
That's correct.
And the way that you guys are suggesting to target those students is, because like a sped aid would not target those students, the way you guys are choosing to target those students is by basically working to enhance the capability of teachers through professional development to further their skills in working with underperforming students. Am I interpreting that right?
That's also correct.
Okay, so that's what that's about. Is there any questions from the board or discussion?
I have something here. Dr. Cooper,
Sir.
my understanding is that this is what's historically been known as Title I students. They don't qualify for this.
That's correct.
Okay, so would it be fair to make the assumption that English learners might need more supports? And if English learners weren't Title I students to any significant degree, that you might not have the best program in your school? I just asked you to hang yourself, so don't do that.
Okay.
So what I'm getting at here is, if you were...
No, I hear you, sorry.
Okay, keep me on track here.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, so if Title I students don't apply for this or aren't eligible for this, was this an auto grant where they just said, here, Acton AADUSD, is this something that staff applied for?
So we did have to develop a plan of action. We did have to submit it to LEGO to review and look at, and we also have to present the plan to you all in order to allow it to happen, and it has to be aligned with our LCAP. So there's work that's involved. You can't simply just get.
So would it be fair to say that in staff development, you might find people able, once they're done with the training, to have an increased child find?
No, I wouldn't say that. I would say that through this training, what our teachers will be able to do is address the needs of the specific group that we discussed earlier.
So in other words, the child find's probably already been done, we know the need, and then we're able to give additional resources towards that group of students that might need additional help.
Yeah, we did have to disaggregate some data in order to identify the 46 students who are eligible.
So if those students have specific needs that someone felt that we might not be addressing so well right now, this is an opportunity to address that with additional funding.
Yes.
Okay, good, thank you.
And procedural, any other questions before?
Yeah, could I ask a question?
Generally on a card, but there's only one. Go ahead, ask a question.
For the professional development, have you already contracted with a group, or are you open to suggestions as to who you contract with for the professional development?
So we've been basing our planning on where the needs are. We don't have anyone that we've identified that this is definitely going to happen, but we do have some ideas of who we will be going with. This money will span over several years, so we're afforded an opportunity to bring in groups of people that would, help train our staff. So money is of a concern. We wouldn't want to go high, but we definitely wouldn't want to cheat ourselves and miss the boat with this opportunity.
I think, go ahead, Ms. David. You're the
Well, I just wanted to clarify, this is actually fairly restricted money. Just as in some cases the money is very restricted only to special education or only to our unduplicated pupils. In working with the county office and clarifying exactly how these funds can be used, it can be used for supplemental materials, supplemental services, or training is really what they're looking at. But what we discovered is that we really want to do this training to be able to help teachers identify differentiated needs. And so it's almost, if you think of a flow chart, when we were working together and working with LACO, we kind of discussed the idea it was a flow chart, and you say, is this child reading at level or below level? Okay, if they're reading below level, is it because they're not, is it a child who has, is an unduplicated student or a special ed student? No, okay, then how do we know? What specific area are they not reading well in? And that's what we want to help teachers improve, because these 46 students who generated the money might or might not be here anymore. But students who meet the criteria, that's where we want to support our teachers in doing that. And then so our specific provider is not identified, but the goal is ultimately to assist teachers in primarily helping this group of students through differentiated data aggregation and then services to students.
So it's not going to be just focused on the 46 identified and generated, it's any eligible student that falls in that category.
We're choosing to do it that way, and reason being is those 46 students are across grades, because it's looking at CASP scores. So those students would currently be 4th graders through 9th graders and 11th graders, but there are many students. So we want to be able to reach the students that are currently here today and next year.
Thank you. Okay, and procedurally, if there's no more questions, we'll leave the hearing part behind. There's a time element to this. All grants have time elements. And then we'll be moving on to call the question, I believe, to actually approve it for submission so that we are successful in getting the grant. Okay, so any more questions as part of the public hearing? All right, so let me check my handy dandy cheat sheet here. Okay, that doesn't ask for me to record when the public hearing closed, so I don't need to.
It's a discussion.
It's a discussion, not a public hearing forum. Fine, I apologize, the terminology is everything. Okay, then let's move on to 11.01, which is a resolution. Resolution 18, thank you, Dr. Cooper, dash 19.12. Oh, oops, I skipped a step, skipped a step. I'm sorry, folks, I'm actually on 10.02, thank you. And this is, we're not actually voting on this?
We are. So the one is a hearing, we
Yep.
have to do a hearing,
That
and
was
then we need to
10.01.
get approval.
And 10.02 is the approval. Fine, thank you, I apologize. I was missing a little, it's cool, Yolanda, I was missing my little fill in the blanks on that one. She gives me cheat notes. Okay, that's how come I'm so good at this. So can somebody move it in for a vote?
So moved.
Okay, so the move is by Mr. Jorgensen and seconded by Kelly Jensen. Okay, call the question. Aye. Okay, I'm going to call that a 401, and it passed, so we can move on. 11, business and financial. Now, I apologize for the mix-up. Now we're doing 11.01, okay, which is a resolution calling for full and fair funding for California's public schools. Does somebody want to make a motion?
So moved.
Okay, I will second. And now, perhaps, Ms. David, you want to lead the discussions?
Sure. We are bringing to you this resolution that we would like to show that our district is supporting full and fair funding. You know, in the state of California, our funding comes primarily through LCFF, and depending which study you look at, we're around 43rd in the nation for funding for students. So what this is looking at is showing support of the state actually moving in a direction to increase funding for all students through LCFF. Actually, corrections, 41st is the actual where we stand in per pupil spending. So we're asking you to consider signing the resolution that would be sent on to show that the district is in support of fully funding our educational process for students in California.
Anybody doesn't mind. So in full disclosure, that we brought a resolution like this before. It's a non-binding resolution. What this resolution does, as Ms. David said, is it says to the state we're advocates for children. Teachers are also excellent advocates for children. Now it's the districts saying, that big pie of money the state has, kids don't vote. It's up to their parents and it's up to school districts to advocate for them. And this is trying to say, please make sure there's full and fair funding for schools. It's, like I said, it's non-binding. It does not imply any sort of tax changes. It's just saying, there's all kinds of constituencies out there who are after the state dollar. And we're advocating on behalf of our students for that state dollar. It did come up before. Mr. Lake, may rest in peace, led a spirited discussion on it. And we're short a board member there, and we failed to pass the resolution. It was a 2-2 at that time. I spoke at some length, after going up to CSBA and learning what was intended by this, and I didn't actually ask for it to be brought back, but I'm glad you guys did. And so I think it's important we understand the intent is limited. It's just to be an advocate for school funding. And if anybody doesn't mind, and I'll turn over to you guys, there's a whole many pages of whereases that lay out the logical argument of why this is important. I just like to read 3 of them so people really understand how dire it is kind of in California to try to run schools and educate kids. Whereas California ranks 45th nationally in the percentage of taxable income spent on education, 41st in per pupil funding, 45th in pupil-teacher ratios, and 48th in overall pupil and staff ratios. Whereas K-12 school funding has not substantially increased on an inflation-adjusted basis for more than a decade. Whereas in 2007, a bipartisan group of California leaders commissioned a report titled Getting Down to Facts which stated that it would take an additional $17 billion for the state of California to meet Board of Education achievement targets for K through 12 schools. This is not asking for $17 billion from anybody. It's just a recognition that the state and all of us, through our representatives, say, hey, schools, you should achieve these goals. The money never follows, And so this is just a recognition of these unfunded mandates, if you will. I only have two more whereases, folks. Whereas California funds schools at roughly $1,961 per student less than the national average, which translates to $3,462 per student when adjusted for California cost of living. Whereas, despite its vast wealth, California has consistently underfunded public education while widening its scope, adding new requirements, and raising standards without providing resources to prepare students for college, career, and civic life. And so this is kind of some of the logic behind why we're non-binding, saying to the state, if we so approve, that we, along with other school districts, are saying K through 12 education is a priority. Try to divide the pie a little more fairer. That's what this is trying to do. Is there any other? Yep.
Now I will connect the dots for you, Mike.
Yes, sir.
Now, every charter that comes in gets what? Startup money, is that correct? So if we have a moratorium on new charters, guess what? There's not going to be any startup money to hand out anymore, to the tune of, what is it usually, 300,000, 400,000, 500,000 for everyone that walks in the door. So I'm relatively sure with this new moratorium that they're going to take that $300,000 to $500,000 for every new charter and put it right back in education. I'm sure they're going to do that, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Mike, can you say those numbers again? They just went, I mean, I was stunned.
I'll
The
say
first
that.
whereas.
Okay. Okay. California ranks 45th out of 50 in percentage of taxable income spent on education. 41st in per pupil spending. 41st.
Oh, it's in here?
Yes,
Okay,
it
never
is.
mind.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
Any other board member comments before we call the question?
Well, I just, if you don't speak up, you're not going to get anything. We have our superintendent going out, being invited where he's never been before. We're a small district, but our kids are no less important than AADUSD or any other district. So it's say, hey, we got a new governor. It's time for him to sit down and start writing some checks, so I'm in for it.
Any other comments, or can we call the question? All right. Call the question? Aye. Okay, that's a 5-0-0. You know, for what it's worth, at least we're going on record. Thank you, fellow board members. I was a little bit passionate about that. Okay. 11.02 is a first read of an annual district safety plan. Does somebody want to make a motion to open this first? So I'll second it. Okay. Mr. Andrus?
Good evening. The state requires annually that we present to the board the district comprehensive school safety plan for you to approve by March 1st of every year. This will be the first reading, second reading on the 28th. This year there are several new mandates for the plan. We've talked about them in our safety updates. I think you have the update, but let me just talk it through. That way it'll generate questions if you have them. We updated the data charts, so that's obvious. Last year in the plan we included, because of legislation, suicide prevention. At the next board meeting, our counselors and Ms. Peterson will be here, Patterson, to present to you the information about the training that we've now developed that will go out to teachers, staff, and community to kind of put some meat behind the language in last year's plan for suicide prevention. New legislation requires that any school offering an athletics program have AEDs, artificial electronic defibrillators, and that those be present at every sporting event. So we'll need to be purchasing those. The deadline is those have to be in place by July 1. All of our teachers received training on the use of AEDs prior to the beginning of school in August, so we're ahead of the curve on training. And so those will be purchased and put into schools, and a plan in place to make sure that there are athletic events. Okay? There's a new bioterrorism requirement. Right now, we were allowed to put that into our chemical hazmat section. We're working with, so you'll hear this in a couple things tonight. We're working with the Antelope Valley Disaster Council, which includes the EOC from both Palmdale and Lancaster, as well as law enforcement and fire. We're also working with the Antelope Valley Schools Emergency Planning Council. All right, so we put bioterrorism into our existing hazmat and chemical area while that larger regional council develops language for all of our services in the area. One of the things that we looked at was the section on bullying, and we took the state's definition of bullying and put that in as our definition of bullying. That's a definition now we want to work through cabinet with all of the sites to make sure that we're all on the same page about what constitutes bullying and how we're going to be reacting to bullying and how we're going to work to prevent bullying. Okay, so that's just an update there. There is a new requirement for a tactical response and a threat assessment plan. That legislation actually allows us to invite law enforcement to sit in closed session with the board and roll out what those plans are. We're not bringing that to you yet because those two regional groups are working with law enforcement, so we have a regional comprehensive plan. Fortunately, the other larger school districts have invited us in to sit on those councils with them and be part of that larger regional plan. The last change we made may seem like a simple one, but last year's district plan, the dress code was the Vasquez High School dress code. So we put in the board policy dress code, which is different. And part of what we'll be doing is going back now and working in cabinet level with the 3 levels. Each school has their own dress code, and then the district has a dress code. We just want to look and see, is that reasonable the way those all fit together in terms of what it is we're trying to teach our students as they mature through our grades. Okay? Those are the changes to the plan. It's a thick plan, but the rest of it is what you approved last year.
Any questions from board members?
Yeah, I have a couple. When you're talking with these other boards over at Antelope Valley and the tactical response, is there consideration due to our remote location?
Yes, so the tactical response has kind of a general level. When a school has an active violent incident happening that's threatening students, there's some general things, right? Who are we going to call, right? Who do we need to talk to? How do we notify the broader region, right? If there's something happening at a Palmdale school, we still want to know about it. And so we're part of their communication chain. Then that plan moves down to every school site. At this school site, this is where we may or may not enter. This is how we will or won't determine whether to use deadly force. And because of that specificity, that's why law enforcement will work that with the board in closed session, because those aren't things that we broadcast for the whole public to see what our tactical things are. So there's a broad kind of communication, and then it drills down to school sites.
So, in reference to my question, is that Antelope Valley, there's a sheriff's station right down the street from Palmdale High School. So they're there in 3.5, 4 minutes. It's going to take 15 minutes to get here.
We hope they
That's
try
what I'm
faster
talking
than that,
about.
but yes, it'll be slower here.
And I read somewhere that they're considering, Mr. Watt, one of our big community members, is doing something about a sheriff's substation in Santiago Square. That will facilitate having some enforcement capability local. So
Well,
the rest of the troops come in.
Right now, we work through the Palmdale station.
Right.
And so we have our local deputy, but we always still call the Palmdale station, and then they send the closest folks.
Yeah.
I believe, isn't that the regional plan or the other plan you were talking about, isn't that also for perhaps if you have a disaster, they would send busing. We kind of network together. Is
Right.
that
So
what
the
that plan
idea-
is?
Go ahead.
So that they could, it's not just the sheriff's station, it's things like if there were, I don't know, we had some crazy flooding or something and we couldn't get our kids out, we would communicate with each other and use busing and other things like that.
The reason we're working with the whole region, so our plan already has an earthquake response, a flood response, all those things. Part of our coordination is not just violent critical incident. It's how do we support each other in an earthquake or a flood? How do we have a plan so that if there's a major earthquake, for instance, that they don't forget that Acton's here while they deal with the larger population center? And so for me, I think it's a real benefit that they've invited us into that group to be able to be part of that larger plan. And really, a lot of the plan is communication about resources, right? Who has buses that they can send to help, who have bus drivers that can help relieve and evacuate.
An
those kind of
example
things.
was some kids, I don't remember where they were going, but outside of the Palmdale School District, there was a lot of snow, they couldn't make it home. So Palmdale School District actually housed them in a gym overnight. So that would be another example, so it's
Right.
not just those types of things, but those as well. But this is actually what was addressed at the superintendent's breakfast on Tuesday. They talked about some things that have happened at the high school presented, and they talked about going to the regional and encouraging everyone to be part of that. So.
We're also including the Red Cross in here, and so the Red Cross in an emergency, schools are often, usually, part of the Red Cross evacuation plan, so we want to make sure we're coordinated with Red Cross also. Many of the storage containers that Red Cross has in the region are not here, but when we're part of that plan, we'll be able to tap into the mobilization of those other resources.
So it's similar, it sounds to me like we're evolving and we're maturing to the fact that it's kind of like the mutual aid between fire departments. If there's a fire here, LA City crosses boundaries to help out. If there's a traffic, sheriff crosses boundaries to help highway patrol. Now we can be working with other districts so that we're all working for the safety of our students, which I like. That's good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see. Now, thank you, Mr. Andrus. Now, Yolanda, my notes are calling for a vote on it, but it's a first read, so we really.
Oh, I'm sorry, no, we don't need to.
Okay. Yep, that's okay. All right. Okay, we're up to item 12.01, future agenda items. We've got some stuff there. We talk about grants all the time. We just did 2 of them tonight. High-speed rail presentation. I don't know whether that will materialize with the change, notwithstanding Mrs. Iyer's notation that clearly the environmental impact process goes on. I don't know if they'll come talk to people, but at any rate, that's on there. Facility maintenance plan, which is something Mr. Falsgraf had requested to staff put together. Evaluation of future district projects. School safety report, suicide prevention, probably specific to suicide prevention, and grants. So that's what the future agenda items are.
Did we just have the suicide prevention and safety plan report?
No.
Okay.
So next board meeting, counseling and Ms. Patterson will present a larger presentation on what our suicide prevention plan is and what that training is going to look like.
Okay, very good. Okay.
I have one I'd like to add to the future agenda. I'd like to request that we have assessment by staff of the recovery of the brand logo for Vasquez High School.
Okay. Is there consensus to add that to the agenda?
Yes, on my part.
Okay. We'll add it. I'm not crazy about it for a reason.
I think I beat this one up over the head 2 years ago when I was looking for the missing Mustang. But yeah, I'm on.
Okay, so we'll put that there.
Kelly, you okay with that?
Well, there's no.
I don't think we can object to another board member asking something to be put on.
Yeah, I mean, I guess anyone who's ever asked for anything has met with Andre.
I mean, strictly speaking, if there was something that they're added by consensus, or we have a motion to add it and then a vote to add it, I'm okay adding it by consensus, even if I won't ultimately support it for various reasons. So it sounds like we're okay adding it by consensus.
Yeah.
All right, very good. There you go, that will be talked about in the future. Calendar, 13.01, okay, so now we're listing our future meetings, February 28th, here, March 14th, March 28th, those are the 2 March meetings, and looking out to April 6th, that will be a special board meeting, board governance workshop. Okay. Ms. Simpson, you like going to those? So,
Closed session 14.
April 6th, that's an open. It's a special board meeting on board governance. I think it's the 3rd of our series.
And the last one.
I suspect that'll be a Saturday thing when we know more about the exact time. What's that?
My guess would be
8 a.m. And they're
Already confirmed, right, Mike?
Yep. Okay, 8 a.m. here. All the rest are the normal 7:30 meetings. Okay, closed session 14. We took no specific actions in closed session, so there's nothing to report out. And let's see, adjournment.
I make a motion to adjourn, Mr. President, at 8:48.
Second.
And Tim seconded.
Okay, call the question?
Aye.
Aye.